For some, there's an even more unsettling experience when they feel that they've been born with another person's memories. In our first encounter tonight, a man goes in search of his other life. Martin Heald from Manchester believes he has an answer that lies long before he was born. The story begins with 7-year-old Martin finding a suitcase of war memorabilia in his father's bedroom.
What's this, Dad?
It's a telephone. He's used it in the war. Must be your granddad's.
How does it work, Dad?
I'll show you. Right, you stay here and I'll give you a ring.
So he unpacked the telephones, went into another room, set them up, and actually started speaking to me.
Private Martin, are you receiving?
Yeah, receiving you loud and clear. What does this button do, Dad?
It's to send Morse code. Listen.
Within a fraction of a second of hearing the Morse code, the actual room itself changed completely, and then heard a low rumble and saw one of these old aircraft coming along in the sky, and it was being attacked by a smaller aircraft. And in the next second, it exploded the larger aircraft. I just couldn't understand what was going on. I was rather frightened at the time.
Dad, I was in this plane and I got shot down. I don't know how I was in the aeroplane.
What are you talking about?
It's true, Dad.
Don't be silly.
Nothing like that had happened to him before in my life, and it was so real, the feelings and the actual scene itself, that it just couldn't be imagination.
All that took place more than a quarter of a century ago. Today, Martin Heald is 34 years old and living in Holland with his girlfriend Jennifer Bowers. After his experience, Martin did his best to put the terrible images out of his mind, but he couldn't. The image of that Second World War bomber being shot down kept coming back to him. Martin did his best to live with the horror, and then one day in the summer of 1995, the image came back more vividly than ever. It was whilst the celebrations surrounding VE Day were on television.
Martin, come and watch this. What's wrong?
The shock for me was so great at the time that I just couldn't understand why I was actually feeling those emotions. I had nothing to do with that era, nothing to do with that time, and there was actual memories. I decided in the end to actually try and find out why I was actually feeling these emotions, and I'd read somewhere about a regression therapist or regression therapy, which could probably give me some of the actual answers that are required.
Martin chose Josie van Asten, a Dutch hypnotherapist. She believes you can be taken back to a former life under hypnosis.
I don't believe that everyone has a past life. I'm sure of it.
Josie hypnotizes her subjects in a darkened, candle-lit room. She gently questions them, gradually regressing them in time.
Your mother's calling you. What is your name?
Richard. Richard Seymour.
How old are you?
18.
What year is it?
It's 1938.
There are a lot of people who can see their past lives. Remarkable with Martin was that there were so many facts and dates.
The pictures I was actually seeing under hypnosis were so clear, it was like actually watching a television picture.
Let's go forward. Where are you now?
I'm at an RAF base. I'm in the armed forces. I'm in the RAF. I'm putting on a uniform. It was heavy. The sleeves are too long.
What happens next?
Chosen.
What for?
To learn Morse code.
And then what happens?
We're gathering for a mission. We're in good spirits, it's going well.
The emotions I could actually feel on the aircraft were unbelievable, especially with the realisation that it was actually flying over to Germany, and by this time I was emotionally this person. I had become this person. I was Martin Heal no longer. I was actually reliving that flight as that person.
Lights.
What's happening?
Bright lights.
Listen to the fire department coming underneath us! Move it ahead! Move it ahead! Move it ahead!
Are you still alive?
No. No. My body won't be found because of the explosion.
Intrigued by the results of the regression, Martin contacted a World War II archive to see if there had ever been a Richard Seymour who served in the RAF. It wasn't long before he got a reply.
Oh my God. Jennifer? Jennifer, look. There's a bloke called Richard Seymour, and he was in the RAF. And he flew in missions during the war.
It can't be true.
I don't believe this. It's amazing.
Incredible.
The facts seemed to fit uncannily with Martin's recall under hypnosis. Incredibly, the real Richard Seymour had been a wireless operator during the Second World War. Richard's plane had been shot down on July the 20th, 1942, as it flew on a bombing mission to Germany. It was the target of an ace Messerschmitt pilot, just as Martin had recalled in his regression. Sadly, the airman still listed as missing, presumed dead. Martin Heald was now convinced he had been Richard Seymour in a previous life. Could that also explain weird events earlier in Martin's life? As a 17-year-old, he sat tests to join the RAF, including one for the Morse code.
And remember feeling during the test a strange deja vu feeling, which at the time I didn't take much notice of. And 2 weeks later, I went back to the Manchester Careers Information Office for the test results.
Ah, Mr. Heald, sit down. I've got your results. Can I ask you, first of all, have you got any experience in Morse code?
No, none.
Well, that's amazing. You got 100%. That's never happened before in the history of the RAF, to my knowledge.
Couldn't the results just have been a reflection of Martin's natural intelligence? Or could he really have been Richard Seymour in a past life? Martin maintains he'd never heard of Seymour before the hypnosis sessions. But is there some other explanation?
We have to bear in mind in all cases of hypnotic regression that the individual might be remembering things that he's acquired in a earlier part of his life and is completely forgotten.
A possible explanation? Martin was convinced not. Just how much information could you reasonably pick up about someone else's life? Surely there's only so much detail you could remember. Martin decided to submit himself to a second, more rigorous session with Yossi.
Where are you?
I'm at my house.
Can you tell me what it looks like?
It's big. It's a big house. There's a door. A wooden door.
Go through the door, and what can you see?
My parents.
What are their names?
My father's called Archie, and my mother's name's Mary.
And I began to see the pictures and feel the emotions as strongly, if not stronger, than the actual first regression itself.
He could describe the surrounding, the house, everything what happens, his feelings, and it was all for him as if he were again in that life.
For the next hour and a half, Martin, under hypnosis, described life for Richard Seymour in 1938. He talked about a village with a row of shops near his house. There was a church with a small spire. Richard's father is the vicar. And there's a pretty bridge over a river opposite his home.
Is there a special place near your house where you like to go?
The river. Small river.
Do you like going to that river?
Yeah. To fish.
Martin decided to investigate and traced Richard Seymour's family to Swallowfield in Berkshire. There, on the village's war memorial, is a tribute to Sergeant Richard Seymour of the RAF. The quiet river Blackwater runs past the village as Martin described. And in pre-war days, there was a small row of shops, which today are private houses. The village church has a short spire. Its pre-war vicar, the Reverend Archibald Seymour, who lived with his wife Mary and family in the vicarage, as Martin had said. But Martin's description of Richard's house doesn't match the vicarage. So had Martin finally got some details wrong? Swallowfield's vicarage has been home to the village's priests since 1956.
Nobody coming to the village within the last 40 years would know of any other building other than that as being the vicarage.
Before then, the old mead house, just 2 doors away, was home to the village's clergy. And Martin's description under hypnosis fits that house exactly. It was the home of the Reverend Archibald Seymour in 1938.
I've not yet come across a case that is 100% proof of reincarnation. And in Martin's case, we cannot say that either. It still requires more evidence to prove it. But certainly it's a very real experience for him, and it is very, very similar to other cases.
Whether Martin's story of a past life is true or not, he has experienced one dramatic change since the hypnosis. He no longer has flashbacks or dreams. The memories of Richard Seymour have been laid to rest.